everyone, and welcome to the debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. In the last 2 weeks, if you can believe it, almost 400 tornadoes have ripped across the country. So we're giving you the latest there. Plus, Special Counsel Robert Mueller finally broke his silence after 2 years. And for all of the Star Wars fans, the theme park of your wildest dreams is here. But first, here's your headlines.
Louisiana's governor is now poised to sign new restrictions on abortion into law. State lawmakers have passed a bill that outlaws abortions after a fetal heartbeat can be detected at about 6 weeks of pregnancy.
When a person's heart stops beating, you know their life is ended.
You're interested in pro-birth, but you're not interested in what happens to that child after they're born, and you're not interested in the baby that's having the baby.
Court hearing scheduled for today in the fight over Missouri's last abortion clinic. The state is threatening not to renew the license for the clinic. Planned Parenthood is now suing, hoping a judge will grant an injunction to keep the clinic open. At least 7 people are dead and 21 more are missing after a tour boat carrying a group of South Koreans sank in the Danube River in Budapest. Officials say the boat turned on its side and went under in just 7 seconds. Search operations are extending for hundreds of miles.
Israel's parliament dissolving itself in an early morning vote after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu failed to put a government together. It sets up a second national election this year.
Awful moments during a Major League Baseball game in Houston. A young girl was rushed to the hospital after she was hit by a foul ball. The Cubs-Astros game was stopped for several minutes as horrified players and fans looked on. Cubs player Albert Almora Jr. hit the foul ball and was overcome with emotion as he realized what happened. No official word on the girl's condition. She hopefully will recover soon.
And as you know, the weather has been devastating and destructive all across the country. In the last 13 days, the U.S. had 398 reported tornadoes in 22 states from California to New Jersey. Well, the most recent one was in Linwood, Kansas, where a tornado obliterated the city last night. So I want to go to Gio Benitez, who's on the ground there in Linwood with more. Gio?
Hey there, Kim. This is what an F4 tornado did here just days ago. That's one of the strongest in the season. Just take a look. This home is completely torn apart. You see those rooms just exposed right there. Now, over the past 2 weeks, this country has seen nearly 400 tornadoes. Yesterday alone, 24 tornadoes across 4 states. Hopefully that's going to die down today. But really, it's so important to look at this and hear those warnings because so many of these people who survived this storm, and there have been so many survivors. In fact, from this storm here, this F4, we didn't see any deaths whatsoever. We've seen 18 injuries, and so many of the people are crediting those warnings from the National Weather Service. That's why it's so important to listen to those warnings, because you can just see the damage that can be done here. The homeowners here were able to leave because of those warnings. They were able to get out before this tornado actually hit Linwood. So that was the good news there. But listen, you still have some storm-related deaths across the country. We know of one woman who was out collecting her mail and a tree fell on her over in West Virginia. And in Kentucky, there was a driver on the road. One of the pieces of the roof, a piece of the roof just fell onto the road and killed that driver there in Kentucky. So really, you've got to stay indoors. That's why it's so important, because any little piece of debris, anything, can just turn into a deadly object. And just something as small as this can be very, very heavy. This is heavy already because it's brick, but it could be especially heavy when it's flying through the air after a tornado. Cam, back to you.
Thank you, Gio. Unbelievably scary. And along with those tornadoes, there's been a lot of flooding overnight in places like Sand Springs, Oklahoma. So Will Carr is on the ground there with more. Will?
Good morning, Kimberly. Behind me is the Keystone Dam. This is a critical point that could stop catastrophic flooding here in Oklahoma all the way down to Louisiana. Now, as you're walking down, authorities have actually blocked off this walkway because they don't know exactly how much the water is going to rise right here. And you can see the water is just churning here. It's a little foggy, but we want to show you on our drone here exactly what we're seeing because this is incredibly impressive. Right now, authorities are pumping enough water to fill more than 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools every second here. Now, authorities are having to determine exactly how much water they pump out here, knowing that if it's too much, it could flood communities downstream. We've already seen that happen earlier this week. In nearby neighborhoods, we saw homes that had water up to their roofs. I talked to one resident who had water lapping up to his property line. He had a canoe and he was ready to go. He said if the water got any higher, he was going to get his family out. We actually went back and tried to find that family again, but we couldn't get into that neighborhood because the water had risen so high. So we're hoping that he's doing okay. The good news right now is there's no more rain in the forecast, so everything is dependent on this dam. The Arkansas River here in Tulsa actually crested just above 23 feet. That's the second highest crest it's ever had. But to the south along the Arkansas River, they're continuing to see the water rise there. And also all eyes on the levees that line this river because those levees are almost 80 years old. So they were threatened earlier this week by all the rain that we've seen. Now they're threatened by all the water that's coming out of this dam. So authorities tell us they have actually lowered the water in the lake behind the dam, but right now they're just trying to ease the pressure, so they're continuing to let out all of this water and is very much dependent on that to see if there's going to be more flooding and more catastrophic flooding to the south of us. Kimberly.
Thank you, Will, and certainly lots of recovery ahead. While we're at it, let's get a proper national forecast from Rob Marciano. Rob?
Hi, Kimberly. Tornadoes and flooding continue to be the weather headlines. This may very well be our 14th consecutive day, 2 weeks full of damaging tornadoes. Hopefully that's not the case. We're starting to see this weather pattern break down, but it's taken its sweet time doing it, and even after it does that, there'll still be some storms around this weekend. All right, let's break down what happened yesterday first. We had 24 reported tornadoes over a 24-hour period, and this is one of them going through Canton, Texas. Look at that debris flying up. Power flashes, my goodness, that is a force of nature, isn't it? And that's been tearing up the country here for 2 weeks, as we mentioned. All right, this system begins to stretch out. The northern part of it will have the most oomph, spin, and lift. So many of the same areas that have gotten these rounds of storms in the afternoon and evening the past week will get it again today, notably Charleston, Cincinnati, Wilmington, Pittsburgh, D.C. and Philly, maybe even New York City. Strong winds, large hail, and you cannot rule out tornadoes. We had a tornado warning yesterday in Trenton, New Jersey. Scranton's been getting hit hard, too. And of course, the flood threat, well, it's not really a threat. It's happening. It's been happening for over a week. Here it is, the Arkansas River. In Arkansas, it continues to rise. It's cresting now in Wichita and Tulsa, where they've had horrific flooding. The problem is it's not going to recede very quickly. So where homes are flooded, they will continue to be flooded for probably over a week. And similar situations, although not to that extreme, across the Missouri, the Mississippi, the Red River as well, and the Sabine. So a lot of the river systems are overflowing with water as they try to make their way into the Gulf of Mexico. Here we go. That ridge in the southeast that brought all the record heat, that's flattening. That's receding somewhat, so a quieter weather pattern shaping up this weekend. Not completely dry, but at least quieter. And we'll look for these temperatures. Look, 91, that's a cold front for you guys in Atlanta. It's been mid-90s there. I mean, Charleston and Savannah have seen temperatures over 100 degrees for several days in a row. So, and some of those cities have seen their all-time warmest temperature in the month of May. Now, albeit dry, low humidity, and for the southeast, they'll take that. 100 degrees is still 100 degrees, so they're going to be looking forward to seeing things cool down, and that will happen as well this weekend. Kimberly, back to you.
All right, thank you, Rob. And we move on to Washington. The person the entire country was waiting to hear from, Special Counsel Robert Mueller, finally breaking his silence after 2 years with a surprise public statement. The big headline, Mueller again declining to clear President Trump of wrongdoing. So take a listen.
The order appointing me special counsel authorized us to investigate actions that could obstruct the investigation. And we conducted that investigation, and we kept the office of the acting attorney general apprised of the progress of our work. And as set forth in the report after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime.
And of course, the president responded, once again blasting the special counsel. So hear him here.
Well, I think it was the same as the report. There wasn't much change. It was, to me, the same as the report. And there's no obstruction. You see what we're saying. There's no obstruction. There's no collusion. There's no nothing. It's nothing but a witch hunt. This is a witch hunt by the media and the Democrats, their partners. I think he is a total conflicted person. I think Mueller is a true never-Trumper. He's somebody that dislikes Donald Trump. He's somebody that didn't get a job that he requested, that he wanted very badly, and then he was appointed. And despite that, and despite $40 million, 18 Trump haters, including people that work for Hillary Clinton and some of the worst human beings on earth, they got nothing. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, so I want to bring in Jack Date in our D.C. bureau. Jack, first, it's worth clarifying that Trump is falsely claiming no obstruction, right?
Well, that's right, Kimberly. Mueller spoke very clearly about this, as you just heard, and in his report as well. He said that if he had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, he would have said so. He didn't say that. That's not an exoneration. The Mueller report details 11 areas that were investigated dealing with obstruction of justice, but they never made a determination about whether or not crimes were committed.
Yeah, so Jack, one thing I want to ask you, you've been covering this investigation since it started. Were you surprised when Mueller finally decided to speak yesterday?
It was a stunning moment. It caught us all by surprise. They'd have approached everything in a very measured way, and he's been silent for 2 years. So hearing from him for the first time in this investigation was absolutely riveting, and the reporters in the room hung on his every word. It was clear, though, that he really wanted to have the last word on his investigation, as he told us that he was resigning and that he was finishing his work.
Yeah, and he also made it very clear that the DOJ policy would not allow him to indict. He couldn't do that under those restrictions. So this kind of suggests in general that a president essentially is above the law, no?
Well, as the Justice Department policy outlines, they can't indict a sitting president because it would create too many constitutional problems. The president, of course, oversees the Department of Justice. And so because of that, the guiding Justice Department opinion is they can't indict a sitting president. However, the president is not above the law. The president could be charged, indicted, prosecuted after he leaves office. But Mueller also pointed to something else, which is there's a constitutional path forward in this, and that really points towards Congress. He avoided using the I word, however.
Yes, he did. All right, Jack Date in our D.C. bureau, thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be very interesting to see how this continues to play out. And another story making news today is about the late Senator John McCain. The White House and the Navy exchanged emails to keep the USS McCain warship out of sight during President Trump's visit to Japan. So I want to bring in Karen Travers at the White House. Karen, President Trump said he had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, this is echoing what he said in a tweet late last night, Kimberly. The president, speaking to reporters on the South Lawn before heading to Colorado, was asked several questions about this latest McCain controversy with his administration, and the president said he did not know anything about it. Here's what he had to say.
Well, I can't because I didn't know anything about it. I don't know who did it. We'll probably be able to find out who did it. They thought they were doing me a favor because they know I am not a fan of John McCain. John McCain killed health care for the Republican Party, and he killed health care for the nation. So I wasn't a fan of John McCain. I never will be. But certainly I couldn't care less whether or not there's a boat named after his father.
And the president also said in response to a question that somebody on the White House staff did this because they thought the president did not like John McCain. And Kimberly, the president called that staffer well-meaning. So certainly signaling he appreciated what they did, but also emphasizing he didn't know about it and had nothing to do with it.
Karen, I think the question becomes, why would a president or anyone keep picking and messing with a senator who has passed?
And this is a question we've asked several times over the past couple of years, and certainly since John McCain passed away last year. It was just a couple months ago where the president was at a manufacturing event in Ohio and started talking about John McCain. At that point, it was 7 months after the Republican senator had passed away from brain cancer. And the president made it very clear that day, as if anybody had any doubts. He says he never liked John McCain, was never a fan, and it was an awkward moment in that room. And of course, we heard from the McCain family at that time saying that they just wanted the president to let it go. He has not. He always brings up that health care vote, but it really does seem like it's more than that. There's something personal there. McCain was, of course, a critic of the president, a rare critic up on Capitol Hill among the Republican Party, a thorn in the president's side, and that is something that is clearly stuck with President Trump.
All right, Karen Travers at the White House, thank you so much for joining us. And we've been keeping you updated on the very dangerous situation at the top of Mount Everest. By now, you've seen the amazing but terrifying images of the single file line of climbers trying to reach the summit. Well, nearly a dozen people have died this year because of that overcrowding and inexperience. So James Longman is in Kathmandu, Nepal with the latest. James?
I'm 15,000 feet above sea level. The air is thin. I am struggling to breathe, but this is the mountain range on which Everest sits. It's currently actually obscured behind clouds, but behind it gives you an idea of what we're talking about here. It is absolutely majestic, and people from around the world have been coming to Nepal to climb these mountains. But this part of the world has had a massive spotlight shone on it because of that massive crowd of people bunching at the top of Everest and the danger that that poses. The biggest question that it has raised is the inexperience of people traveling here who want to climb the mountain. We have spoken to mountaineers, experienced climbing professionals who say that people on that mountain have been unable to use the equipment needed to be able to successfully climb Everest, holding other people up, and that is what caused the holdup. So the question now is, will the Nepalese government institute changes which ensure that in future those holdups don't happen and the danger to life isn't prolonged? James Longman, ABC News in Nepal.
All right, James, and we certainly hope that they do so everyone stays safe. And for all of the basketball fans out there, the NBA Finals begin today. History's in the making because the Toronto Raptors are making their first ever Finals appearance against the veterans, the three-time champions, the Golden State Warriors. So TJ Holmes is in Toronto because TJ gets the best assignments ever. So TJ, tell me what's up.
Hey there, Kimberly. I know it's your favorite time of year. Basketball, right? Did you even know the finals is happening? Somebody have to tell you. Look, I know you're not a huge basketball fan, but let me explain to you why you need to be paying attention to the NBA Finals, because we're going to see a first in the history of the NBA Finals. We're going to have an NBA Finals game in Canada. Yes, the Toronto Raptors are making their first ever appearance in the NBA Finals in their 25-year history. I am standing in what they call their Jurassic Park, and this is where fans, oftentimes hundreds certainly, but thousands have even gathered out here before, during, and after games. They watch that huge monitor up there on Scotiabank Arena. It actually says GMA at the NBA Finals. Yeah, it's impressive, right? We're going to try to get them to leave that up for the entire next 3 weeks. But this is where they gather oftentimes to watch the game, celebrate wins. But they're going up against, of course, the Golden State Warriors, who have now won 3 championships in the past 4 years. So they're going for the 4th championship in the past 5, and this is their first championship in which they didn't have to take on LeBron James. Yes, not having to go to Cleveland for the first time in 5 years, Kimberly. That's a big deal. Love you, Cleveland, but okay, we'll get into that later. But the point is, they don't have to take on LeBron, but they're taking on seemingly all of Canada. and that Toronto is the only NBA franchise in Canada, so the whole country is really rooting for these Raptors. One other thing of note, Drake, of course, has been a big storyline during the NBA playoffs because, of course, he is a Raptors team ambassador. He's a Toronto guy, huge fan, but some of his antics on the sidelines have gotten a lot of attention, including that shoulder rub he gave Nick Nurse, the coach for the Toronto Raptors. Well, the NBA, get this, has actually reached out to the Raptors team and said, you need to get your boy. You need to actually talk to him about his antics because he's possibly violating the NBA fan code of conduct. We don't know if that message is getting relayed, but if you're watching the game, if you're not a basketball fan, Kimberly, maybe you're a Drake fan, so at least can we get you to watch for that sake?
All right, TJ, I hear you. And for the record, I did know it was the NBA Finals after my senior producer told me. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, we move on to a viral post I saw on Instagram. It was an assistant principal, Seema Na, at a predominantly black charter school in D.C. She holds these roundtables after school for the parents, almost like a therapy session to talk and raise their emotional awareness and identify triggers so they aren't in turn triggering their kids. So take a look at part of a recent session.
Yeah, I'm okay with the insult.
Mm-hmm.
You can call me a million.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's real. It's when the hands.
But you're not gonna put your hands on.
Period.
And that's what I teach my son because I only have one child.
Period.
So a lot of times he comes here and
let's hear her. Let's hear her.
Multiple siblings, they be at home beating each other up. See, they bring that energy here. Y'all not gonna be punching on my child because we don't fight each other in the house. So I have to teach him to hit back.
Okay. And when we start talking about strategies, I'm gonna bring it back to you because I want to hear, and I want you to share with everybody like the conversations that you do have with him to instill that belief and that thought inside of him so it actually shows when he's in school.
So this really struck me, not just because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, but because it's something that seemed especially healing for Black communities. So I'm so happy to have Seema Na in our DC bureau. Seema, first, amazing work. I grew up in a home where we were just in survival mode. So oftentimes parents don't have the time to focus on their own emotions and their well-being. And that's really what your roundtable is all about, yes?
Yep, absolutely.
So tell me about it a little bit.
Absolutely. So the roundtable began as a place for me to give strategies to families around emotional wellness, mental health, but what it became was far more greater than that. It became a safe place, a safe communities for families and parents, both male and female, to share their experiences, what was going on in their lives, what worked, what wasn't working, what they liked, what they disliked, and to really just share it with other families. And they began to motivate each other. They began to build off one another. They began to help each other. And although we changed the course, the outcome was still the same. So I was happy with it.
Yes, I think it's a beautiful thing. And there's also, as you know, there's a huge stigma against therapy in Black communities. So how are these discussions kind of working against that?
Absolutely. These discussions are opening the door for parents to speak, right? It's opening the door for them to express their emotions. There's a taboo with us being able to share how we feel. And it's created a space for them to feel comfortable in that, but also it's created a space for them to have the language to be able to express those emotions. And that energy is transferable, right? It doesn't just stay with the parent. Those are skills that they are building, and it transfers to their kids, it transfers to their peers, it transfers to other parents, and in turn, it transfers to the community.
It's really amazing. So a big impact on the kids, because what you have inside, if you're processing it, then of course you're not going to be putting that outwardly onto someone. What has the response been from the parents participating in this?
The response, so when we first started, I was a little skeptical because of the stigma around mental health and because of the stigma around sharing your emotions. You know, I grew up in a household where, you know, what happens in a house stays in a house.
Yes.
And I was really scared, you know, what if they didn't share and what if they didn't feel comfortable? But it was the complete opposite. Families trusted each other, they trusted me, they trusted the space. And I think in that, right, we're doing the work, and it's starting to shift. And I tell them after every session, you know, this doesn't happen within a day. This is something that we have to continue to work at, because we don't want to continue the cycle.
I love it, and I think it's incredible, and I thank you for joining us, and I want everyone to see it because it's so incredibly important. So thank you, Seema. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kimberly.
All right, guys, you will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Star Wars Galaxy Edge officially opening tomorrow at Disneyland, and excitement is off the charts. Now, witness the power of this fully operational theme park. So Clayton Sandell, who is the biggest Star Wars fan, was able to check it out. Clayton, you're my only hope. Tell us what it's like being there.
I absolutely approve of that intro, Kimberly. But I got to tell you, you said TJ had one of the best assignments. I think I win best assignment for the day. I mean, look at this. You got a full-size Millennium Falcon right behind us here. This thing is an absolute magnet. People have been coming in, Disney employees, all sorts of people have been coming up just to take a picture next to this Falcon. And my friends at Lucasfilm tell me that this is the most accurate, the most detailed Falcon that's ever been built. It's now like the gold standard for Millennium Falcons. Because a lot of times when they're making the movies, they don't build the entire thing, but here, 360 degrees all the way around, you get to see it from top, bottom. This is the real deal, and 4-year-old Clayton is like going nuts. I feel like I'm an action figure in my own Star Wars set here. So the land is now officially open. Well, tomorrow is the official opening for the public. They'll be able to come in. But last night we had a dedication ceremony right here. Total Star Wars royalty. We had George Lucas. We had Mark Hamill, of course. Luke Skywalker was here. Billy D. Williams, who plays Lando Calrissian, who of course was the original owner of the Falcon, was here. And then we had Harrison Ford, Kimberly. Harrison Ford, the original Han Solo, showed up here to dedicate the Falcon, and they had a little bit of an audio glitch, but what you heard Harrison Ford do was dedicate this opening to Peter Mayhew, who of course was his co-star for many years, who played Chewbacca, and Peter Mayhew just passed away a couple of weeks ago. So it was a really nice touch. But you can now come in. One of the main rides is open here at Galaxy's Edge. You can fly the Millennium Falcon. You're either a pilot, a gunner, or an engineer. You get to fly the Falcon, and then there'll be another big ride opening in August called Rise of the Resistance. That's one where you kind of get captured on a First Order Star Destroyer. You run into Kylo Ren, and then you have to figure out how to escape from Rise of the Resistance. So one last thing I want to show you before we go here. I'm going to turn around. Not only do we have a Falcon, but we have a brand new TIE Fighter here. We've never seen this thing before, but they're hinting that maybe we might see this in an upcoming movie. So bottom line, Kimberly, I'm never leaving.
All right, Clayton, you are absolutely living your best life. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have fun.
You bet.
All right, my friends, continue to take care of yourselves. And if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. Presidential candidate John Hickenlooper is going to be joining the show, so you definitely want to check that out. Then we're going to have World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com to see more about Galaxy's Edge, or you can download the app. So I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I will see you tomorrow.